Hey everybody, Rob Orgel, your favorite silencer nutjob, and as you can see behind me, I have over 300 suppressors that I have personally tested and released a ton of information about. If you're just tuning in with us, consider hitting that like, comment, subscribe. In today's video, we're going to talk about the 5 things that first-time silencer buyers get wrong. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that like, comment, subscribe. If you like learning about silencers, it really does go a super long way for the channel. The subscriber thing seems to be a really hard thing, and sometimes YouTube even unsubscribes people. It is not gun friendly. So whatever you do to support us in the comments and you're subscribed and all that good stuff, it goes a long way. I super appreciate you. Let's get into it. Today's primary sponsor is Suppressor Tools. Now, this guy is not just a good person to do business with, and I always look for companies I enjoy working with, and I have to tell you, this is one of them. But also, he's come up with a bunch of great solutions to problems that we suppressor owners have, like all the different weird tools you have to have. He's found ways to combine a bunch of them. So, shout out to Suppressor Tools. Feel free to check them out. All right, I would say that there's more than 5 things that cause first-time buyers to go home and be sad with their first suppressor purchase. The first one is purchasing based on sound alone. Now, there are not a lot of good ways to learn about sound because microphones on YouTube and all that other stuff really don't pick up the peak part of a suppressor sound, or a gunshot for that matter. So comparing them becomes a little bit different. So on my channel, I do a lot of side by side, because if I shoot a rifle and then shoot a different rifle, it's hard to remember what something sounds like, and it's hard to compare it. So what I've learned is a side-by-side comparison. 2 bolt-action rifles or 2 outbound ejecting AR-15s is really the best way to get sound performance head-to-head testing, so you can find the best one. But when you find the best one, that is in one of several categories, just sound. So when you're purchasing your suppressor, don't look for just the best sound in that class. Look for some other things like back pressure, mounting solution, versatility, price, weight. There's a lot of other good categories you might want to consider before buying based on sound alone. Next is don't ignore your host weapon when selecting your suppressor. It's unlikely that we're so lucky that we get to buy one suppressor and put it on one gun. It is my goal for me and everyone else that you get to a point in your shooting career where you buy one suppressor for one gun, because that's the ideal circumstance. However, most of us want to buy one suppressor and use it on several guns, maybe even continuously, maybe have one suppressor to do all of them. That introduces some additional problems, and I'll come back to that soon, but quite simply, keep in mind the host weapon. So when people say, hey Rob, what do you recommend for 308? That's like me saying, what kind of car do you recommend? But you don't know the size of my family, where I live, if I tow a boat sometimes. There's a lot of information. It needs to be a conversation. Very often, it turns into a phone call with many of my people watching these videos. We've chatted before on the phone because I want to help you best and not give you a simplistic answer, but give you the best answer. So if you know your host and you take that information with you when you go to the gun store, you're going to come back with a lot better results. Also, many hosts can be tuned to take a suppressor, especially if it's a semi-automatic type host. Mounting solutions. Often we go to the gun store, buy the suppressor, come home and say, it doesn't fit. Well, that's because your rifle maybe wasn't designed to be suppressed. And if it was designed to be suppressed, it's going to have, let's say it's Android plugin and you've got an Apple plugin, and they don't play together. So there's all different types of mounts. Now, I did a deep dive for 50 minutes on mounting solutions. If you're interested in mounts, please check out that video. Eric Anderson, the owner of East Valley Tactical, and I laid out, I think, around 400 mounts on the table and discussed really which ones are better, which ones are the worst, and which ones we personally like the most and why. But just because I like it doesn't mean you're going to like it for your specific needs. But do keep in mind, mounting solutions has a major effect on the performance of that suppressor, as well as the longevity of that suppressor, and how it interfaces with your rifle. Lighter isn't better. I have some incredibly lightweight suppressors, 4 ounces, 5 ounces, and they are 4 AR-15s. But you got to know, when you go real light, there's some trade-off. We're not spitting gases in all the ways you might want to on a super light suppressor. Or we might get really hot really fast, meaning after you shoot half of a magazine, your silencer can be glowing red and you can't touch it and you can't put it away. So light is good. I'm a big advocate of lightweight. However, there is a point of diminishing returns. So be careful going too light. If your suppressor is around, I don't know, 8 or 9 ounces, that's like a good minimum part. You go up from there, good things can happen. I don't like heavy systems. So as soon as we start hitting the 14 plus ounce, we're coming up on a pound, and I don't like a pound on the end of my rifle, so I like to keep it under a pound if I can, and that puts me into often titanium suppressors, and I'm definitely looking for low back pressure too. Speaking of back pressure, this is probably the biggest item in my opinion. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I use a rifle speed adjustable gas system to test every suppressor I own and find out exactly how much back pressure is being increased into that weapon system by adding the suppressor. So I have a metric of every suppressor I own and how much back pressure it introduces into that weapon as opposed to without. And then of course compared to a standard high back pressure suppressor and a low back pressure suppressor. So I'm always looking for the lowest possible amount of increased back pressure to my weapon. That is really important when purchasing your first suppressor, especially if it's going on a semi-automatic weapon. If it's going on a bolt action weapon, you could argue that back pressure still matters a little bit for certain circumstances, but generally doesn't matter quite as much. Purchasing obsolete designs. Someone else just made a video very recently about the top selling suppressors, and they listed off 3 of the current best sellers, and my jaw was on the ground. These suppressors are 5+ years old in their designs. Not to say that they were not good for their time, but 5 years ago, that's kind of like buying a TV from 20 years ago. We have evolved so much, so fast. And every year, every 3 months, I release a new buyer's guide because we're just moving so quick. So to go to a design that's 5 to 10 years old is just silly. It's just from lack of knowledge. It's because we see a sale. It's because our buddy has one. So they regurgitate what they like because it makes sense for them. But there's a lot of really great, super lightweight, low back pressure designs that we're missing out on if we're buying a silencer that was designed 5 years ago. Now, there are still some that are like, hey, you know, for its time, it's good. And in some ways it keeps up, but it's not going to keep up in all the same ways. It's not going to be as light, as low back pressure, as quiet. It's just not going to happen. So do consider looking at the newer design suppressors. If your suppressor that you're looking at purchasing is over 2 years old, chances are there's something that's already replaced it at least once. So be careful when buying your buddy's favorite that he got 5 years ago. That can be a dangerous thing. The most versatile can. Now, this is a bit of a paradox. Everybody, when they're buying their first can, they want the most versatile can they can get, and that's where the 46 caliber stuff comes into play. Now, for those of you who shoot 45 ACP and 45 long Colt and those type things often, this might make sense to you. But for everyone else who just wants to include it in their coverage, they're often making a mistake. 45 is a large aperture, so you're pushing a lot of gas out of that silencer before it's fully coiling or spinning. This means it's going to be loud. So if you have a one can to suppress them all, there are some decent ones doing that, but they're in the 36 space, 36 caliber and below. I can think of a couple great examples. Check out the buyer's guide for your most up-to-date example of best 36 caliber suppressors. But if you want a dual can, you probably want more of that 9mm/36 caliber dimension so that it can do all of your needs without going so big that it sounds bad on everything except the 45 ACP and the 45 long Colt that most of us only shoot occasionally for fun, but not primarily. So the argument would be, if you want a can for 5.56, get a 5.56 can. But if you want a can that also does 5.56, 308, and all your other stuff, 36 is a good spot to go, but know that eventually you're gonna fall in love with your suppressor, you're never gonna go back to shooting unsuppressed, and you're gonna say, I wonder how much better a 5.56 can is. And then you'll buy a 5.56 and a 6 and a 308, and it's addictive, if you can't tell, and that's okay too. But just go into it knowing if you're gonna suppress your whole collection, but you normally shoot 5.56, it's not a bad idea to start with just a 5.56 suppressor. And then once you fall in love, expand to the other calibers as well. This video is also brought to you by T&K Outdoors, not just a good dude, a veteran Marine like myself, but also offering soft goods and now killer suppressors. All right, the bonus round, waiting too long. I can't tell you how often my comment section says something like, well, I was gonna buy this, but then this came out. Well, I was gonna buy that, but then this came out. And we're forever evolving, and that's a wonderful thing. And some people are mad at me because they go, Rob, you just told me this was the best, so I bought it. 1 week later, I got it, and then you tested this and said it was even better. I think they made a couple commercials about that, about driving home with your new computer, and there's a billboard for a newer one. That's how the silencer world is working right now. So there's the 300 I've tested, which I think I have the most ridiculous personal collection of anyone in the United States for suppressors. I think. I don't know. Tell me if you know somebody who has more than 300. I'd be intrigued to know. But I have a lot, and there's as much as I know. So I'm still learning. There might still be better suppressors that I'm just not privy to yet because I haven't had one sent in for testing yet. So there's what I know, and then there's what the industry is doing. So between those two things, I'm forever evolving in my knowledge, and the industry is forever evolving in what they're learning with what we can do now with 3D printing. And because there's no $200 tax stamp, silencers are hard to keep in stock, which is a wonderful thing. It is a booming market for everyone who wants to buy a silencer and wants to sell a silencer. I don't do either of those things. I just educate people in what I'm learning because I think it's fun. But don't wait for that next one because there's always going to be a next one. If you want a best recommendation for now, check out the buyer's guide for the most up-to-date what I recommend of each different caliber. And if you pick one of those, you're going to be happy. And if in a month a newer one comes out, it will be a little better, but not a ton better. Sometimes we're leaping forward. But right now we're creeping and just little bits at a time. So that maybe in a year you could say, well, this is still good compared to this newest best. But don't tell your buddy to buy this because this one's that much better, lighter, lower back pressure required. All those good things that keep continually happen. So my bonus round is, guys, don't wait. It's a great time to be buying. It's a great time to be learning and shooting, but don't keep waiting for the next one because there's always going to be a next one. Guys, if you like this content, please consider hitting that like, comment, subscribe. It's a small community, but it's a growing community. I love sharing this information and I appreciate you watching this video. As always, stay safe and we'll see you in the comments.